Hey guys, so has coronavirus really ground the economy to a full stop? So what I want to do is just look at the numbers. So I've just gone to a whole heap of different news agencies and things like that, just to look at the numbers from Ernst and Young to Knight Frank and all around, and see what they're predicting, what they're saying, and what the actual numbers are, and that sort of thing. So basically, firstly, let's just look at this. So there's no reliable data back from, say, the 1920s. So lots of people are running around going, oh, depression worse or just as bad as the Great Depression and that. The numbers just don't stack up there. They can sort of estimate and guesstimate, but the numbers aren't perfect, okay? So yes, they have numbers, but, can you really, is it apples for apples? Not really, okay? Probably the GDP is the best indicator. And the other thing is that, when you look at this, you've got to look at over what duration, because it's all good to say 10% drop, but if that 10% drop is over 1 year versus, say, 4 or 5 or 10 years, it's a different type of experience. And I think that's what we've got to really look at. Look, most people are running around, and even myself, I'm saying, the pause button on the economy. And I think we're saying pause, not stop, because I think the important thing to understand here, the economy is still going. Yeah, things are still happening. Food, manufacturing, you name it. There's a whole range of things that are actually happening in the economy. Medical, schools, even though they're on remote, the teachers are still going to school. So there's still people getting paid. There's still the economic wheels are turning. So it's not a case of, I think when we say stop or pause, a lot of people think that we're back down to zero and it's like nothing is happening, and we're totally reliant on the government. No, actually, if you think about it, in the Great Depression, what they're talking about is potentially a 10% drop in GDP. A 10% drop. That means there's still 90% of GDP there during the Great Depression. Okay, so what we're talking about is somewhere between 10% and 0%, or growth, I guess. But I think, no, things have definitely dropped off. Now, look, let me give you some numbers. 1 million people, they reckon, are unemployed, have gone for universal credits. So that's 1 million people over, I think, 66 million is how many they've got in the country. So, that is quite a substantial amount already. Now, some of those may end up coming back on furlough, but, you're talking about hospitality, hospitality, a 96% drop in hours worked. 96. I mean, that's basically from there to zero. There's been pretty much a fall to zero under discretionary spending. So people aren't spending any discretionary money. They're not going out to restaurants. They're not going anywhere where there's discretionary money. So that's really ground things to a halt. Footfall's down like 83%, 44% down new car sales. And remember, a lot of this information isn't actually since the lockdown, which could even be worse than that. Okay, so some of these figures are from last month, the month before, and more recent, but they could be over the last quarter. They could be, so a lot of these figures, you've got to really weigh up, the truth of them. But the fact is the economy has dropped. We probably will go into a recession. I think that's pretty much a foregone conclusion-ish. But the question is, when the play button is pushed after the pause, whether that takes us out then, and therefore it's not that big a deal of a recession. And I think that's as long as we keep the unemployment down, then that is likely to have an effect. But look, there's no doubt about it. There is a lot going on right now, and we're being shielded from it because of the government policies that have been put in place, which I think are fantastic. Knight Frank reckon 500,000 sales could be lost. Yeah, that's a lot of people selling property. Now, we already come from a low base. So the good news about that, coming from a low base, means people have been able to hold it. If they, they weren't in a position to sell for Brexit, or when Brexit, all the issues with Brexit were happening, the likelihood is they can still hold now through this. So I think, Knight Frank are talking about a 3% drop this year in house prices and a 5% increase in 2021. That could still happen, I'm thinking more, there's going to be more of a downside than that. I think that's quite optimistic, and I think that would be if everything, if we had a fair wind behind us and everything worked well. I'm not convinced that that's going to be the case. But, as you can see, some industries have been hit totally. I mean, if you're on a cruise ship right now, wow. I was watching, reading some articles today about cruise ship, and they're predicting that it's going to be 2023 before they're back up to 20% of the capacity they're at in 2019. You know, that's a long time, you know, to be doing. So, you know, if you want to go on a cruise ship, I reckon there'll be some really, really cheap, super cheap ships, you know, going around, or cabins. But look, let's talk about this one particular thing, which is, you know, is it as bad as the Depression? Is it as bad as World War II? Is it going to be that sort of thing? So look, 2020, Ernst Young is saying that the GDP drop will be around about, so they're saying 6.8, so say 7%. Yeah, a drop of 7%, and this is where a lot of this depression word comes from, which is basically in 1919 there was an 8% drop, and in 21 there was a 10% drop. So so that's significant drops. That's still at this stage, from what most people are looking, that's still worse than what we're seeing here, and I would agree with that. Okay, I agree with that. I think if the government, especially in the UK, if the government plays its cards right, it stimulates in the right manner, which it has done so far, by getting individuals and businesses, and getting the money to them, and not necessarily looking after all the wealthy and big corporates and that. I mean, look at the US and do the opposite is sort of the advice the thing that I'd be doing now, because let's face it, they're a bloodbath right now. We're probably worse than World War II, because World War II 5% drop. Yeah, so we're probably ending up somewhere between the Depression and World War II. If you look at the 2028, the 2008, the global financial crisis, the GDP was about a 5% contraction. Okay, so there was actually 2.1% drop in a single quarter at that stage, which is we'll probably have a bigger one than that, and we'll probably have a bigger contraction than that. So it's likely to be worse than it was in 2028. But remember, in 2028, in 2008, all right, in 2008, what they did was they stimulated and they played trickle-down economics, which is they invest money in the big corporations and they expect that to trickle down. Doesn't work. Yeah, fails dismally. Makes corporations rich, makes shareholders and directors rich, and that's about all it does. Artificially rises the price. It doesn't actually help the average person. By doing what they've done this time, not the US, but the UK, Australia, Canada, and other a whole heap of other countries, they've given money directly to those individuals. That actually, now, sure, right now nobody's spending it, but that keeps them in jobs. Yeah, that allows them to have money, so that when we come out of this and when the play button is pressed, we're back into it. Hopefully, pretty quickly, and we will see how that works. If you like, two phases. Phase one is the virus phase, and phase two is the post-virus phase. I think they've done a pretty bloody good job of the virus phase. The post-virus phase, we'll see how they play, but I hope if they keep the same attitude and they keep the same approach, I think we're likely to pull through this better than what we may have done. Because let's face it, there's been a massive bubble building, and if that bubble goes pop, then potentially we're going to have deflation or deflationary pressure across all economies, and hit hard. But yeah, look, bottom line is a lot of people are still working. They're just working from home. And yes, they're not as productive as they were. My team are not as productive as they were. And part of that is not because of my team, it's because they're having to deal with not only the job at hand, but the emotion that goes along with the job. And especially with the property management, that's a hard one, because those guys, my guys, they are getting bombarded with emotional tenants who are saying, I'm not going to pay my rent, I can't pay my rent, I get, and they range from the full spectrum. And that's just not my business. I'm sure that's every business out there. People who can't pay their bills and want time to pay, people who don't want to pay their bills because they've just said, screw it, I don't care, this is what I'm doing, and that. But look, bottom line is, never stop, never means stop. Yeah, the economy is still moving, but if you think about it, 10% drop, the Great Depression, 5% was World War II, and we're going to end up, say, about a 7%. So that's a fairly big ask. That's fairly big. It's a serious thing out there. But certainly pause doesn't mean dead stop. We are not at a dead stop. Yeah, the economy is still moving, which means, and this is, I think, the real thing that I want to get across in this video, is there is still opportunities out there. There's still reasons why you need to be sitting there and working out how to pivot your business, your life, and how to take advantage of the opportunities that are there. They're going to be there. Already I'm speaking to developers about, how we can get their property sold. And a lot of them are saying, well, no, we're just going to wait and see what happens. But I'm getting in there now, because when they think and they go, you know what, yeah, it would be good and nice to get rid of 20 properties, they're going to come to me first, And it may be that I'm pivoting to the education side of the business, which I've been meaning to do for a long time. It's just giving me a bit of a kick up the bum now, so we're about to launch that. These things, this is what you do in a crisis, is you go and look for opportunities. But I think the big challenge, and the thing you've got to really be thinking of, is you don't pivot to something you don't know. Yeah, there's so many opportunities out there. You have to pick the ones that you can make work. Yeah, because otherwise, if you spread yourself too thin, if you do something because it seems good or somebody else says it's good, and it's not necessarily what you should be doing, or if it's outside your core business, well, you might want to think about that. But anyway, guys, so hopefully that gives you a bit of an insight into my thinking around, is stop really stop, or is pause, and has the economy really ground to a halt? Well, it certainly hasn't. But guys, stay safe, stay healthy, and remember, stay inside for the time being. But while you're sitting there, in the shower or whatever, having a coffee, think about what's the opportunities out there you can take advantage of, because there is going to be lots of them, and there's already some there. I've been chatting today, and the amazing opportunities that are already starting to appear in property. They're there. You just have to be open to them. You just have to have the right frame of mind, get out there and get them. All right, guys, have a great day. See you. Bye.